Welcome to Pandora's Box. This is our second episode and very, very happy to be back. Thank you so much for everybody that has left comments, made suggestions, and that had asked amazing questions. We really do appreciate your input and your feedback. As always, my guest with me here in studio, Felicity guest. Felicity?
Hello viewers, thank you for joining us again. We hope that you thoroughly enjoyed our first episode and that you continue to share our page and YouTube and subscribe. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Pandora's Box Chat Show.
So last week we discussed financial abuse, and our Pandora of the episode was in a position where she's never worked in her life. She was married since she was 19. And her husband suddenly decided he's now had enough, and he left. And financially, she just had no way of knowing what to do and where to go next. Still have children in school, and we discussed which way she needs to go and where to find help. Her process obviously is still underway, and she hasn't really yet found the answers. And the case is still ongoing. We will keep you posted on all these cases that we do discuss. And later on, Aisha Karim will be joining us again. But first, I want to ask you, Felicity, to unpack the word financial abuse. You were part of the advocacy around financial abuse. Please do give us a little bit more insight into what are we exactly talking about when I say financial abuse.
I just want to make it clear at this point that our views are our views, and they're based on our experiences, and that in no way do I profess to be the expert in terms of psychology or legal. So, we coach people from our own experiences, and that's what we're really doing, is sharing our experiences and our knowledge and our insights with other women particularly. Financial abuse is defined in the Domestic Violence Act as economic abuse. Now, economic abuse and financial abuse, they really are much of a muchness, but in our Domestic Violence Act, what we see there is the traditional definition of economic financial abuse, and that is of somebody in relationship where they are being denied the opportunity to be economically active, and that's the difference between economic and financial, really. So what do we mean by not being economically active? It means not working. So in Pandora's case, her husband did not want her to work. So with hindsight, you can see that while he controlled the finances, we don't know all the details, whether she was ever allowed to go and spend money without his permission, whether he just gave her a stipend, but that is the control and the abuse under the Domestic Violence Act. And so who can get a protection order under the Domestic Violence Act is anybody who is in a relationship with somebody or has been in a personal relationship with somebody. So you and I can't go and get a protection order under the Domestic Violence Act against each other, because unless we were in a relationship of sorts. Otherwise, people would then have to go and get an interdict. So that's why the Domestic Violence Act is very specifically designed to protect people. And this is not only against, from a woman against her ex-partner. There are quite a few men who have also taken out protection orders to seek protection, often not physical abuse, but more on the emotional and the psychological abuse. And there are also some men who are financially abused by women, who try and destroy them. But why do we focus on women? Because it's a majority in this country.
And also, I think because in the system, in the patriarchal system that we are part of and always have been part of, the system was very much created by a man for a man. And if I, for example, or in this case Pandora, find herself in a situation where she thinks she is being financially abused, how would she know? What are the things that she's going to look at in particular? What are the tick boxes that she can tick off? Yes, 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 okay, this is financial abuse.
In my opinion, I think that certainly from my own experience and from the insight I've gained from having a group with 52,000 people and where you see something is repetitive, certainly makes you start thinking about it. So one of them was this recognition of the control post-relationship. And the only way that that can be exercised is financially, because physically you're no longer in their control. And how do they still, if you come, particularly if you come out of an abusive relationship, how do you still control somebody? How do you manipulate somebody? It's financially, by the withholding of finances.
So, taking financial abuse and the act, how did we go from, because you were very instrumental in creating awareness for financial abuse, how did you spread more awareness of this, and how did you actually make people aware of, actually, you know what, we call that financial abuse and you should seek protection?
If you are not providing financially for your child, you're abusing your child. Because how do you expect a child who is not economically active to be able to go out and provide for themselves? You're abusing your child. It's like saying, I'm not going to send you to school.
And that's illegal.
That is a fundamental right of the child, and it's illegal. Just as financially supporting your child is considered a criminal offence in this country.
When you don't do it.
If you don't contribute financially. So unfortunately we live in a society where this isn't all a voluntary process, so it's having to have legislation in place and then having to enforce it. So that's why I started creating awareness underneath financial abuse, because if you just keep saying what our mothers have been saying, what our aunties, our sisters have been saying, that, you know, financially supporting my child, nobody's paid attention. It doesn't, it's not, hang on, I need to really pay attention to this. And I think the moment you actually start using or highlighting the word abuse, it certainly attracts far more attention on the seriousness of not financially supporting your children.
Okay, so with the advocacy, did you succeed in anything in particular? Is there any wonderful highlights that you can share with us since you started it and where you're now?
It's certainly been a long road. In terms of empowering women, there is a lot more awareness. So with having greater awareness, women are able to go and enforce their child's right, because we must remember this is not our right to income. This is a child's right to financial support from both parents. So we're just acting as the witness, really, to bring it to the court's attention that our child is not being financially supported by both parents. Then it's actually up to the state to enforce that, because the high courts are the ultimate guardians of children. We're just caretakers, really. But we're not given the support to do that through the maintenance courts. So from an awareness point of view, we have certainly empowered a lot more women through educating them on their child's right and coaching them how to go about the maintenance procedure. And from an emotional point of view, because I think that's probably the biggest thing that prevents you from going, is the emotional strain, and also the maintenance courts that just are so prolonged. Yeah. And often with very little results.
I think when we were talking a few weeks back, you mentioned if the courts stop taking cases now, it'll take them a certain amount of time to get their books cleared. Can you share that with us? Because I think that's quite profound.
This is a couple of months ago. It was said by an ex-magistrate who had worked in maintenance courts for many years. He actually stated that if they stopped taking in new cases, that it would take them 3.5 years to clear the backlog.
It's shocking.
So
that's just shocking.
So how did we end up in this situation? I think one of the reasons that we ended up in this situation is because I went and did some research, and the Department of Justice released some stats for I think it was the 2017-2018 year, where they said they only had 1,673 odd cases that had not been resolved.
Only?
In a whole year. Now, I can dispute that just with the amount of people on the group, that figure is not a reality of what is happening in our... And the comment from the ex-magistrate that it would take 3 years to clear the backlog.
Yeah.
So where does that figure come from? I think we need to ask the Department of Justice where those figures come from. Are those figures really independently audited? Because everything gets audited
Internally,
and there's some external monitors. So who's monitoring these? Who's challenging this? Because I dispute those stats.
So what it tells me is, if we're looking at the backlog and you just entered the system, that for a woman struggling to get money from her estranged husband, to look after the children, to pay for your everyday things, and you're not working, it's going to take a while.
The Department of Justice have a policy that, I suppose it's their dream, their ideal, to resolve a maintenance case within 90 days.
Well, I've been divorced 11 years.
Exactly. So at the moment, you are lucky if you get a first appointment within 90 days. So that's not a resolution.
It normally takes about 3 months just to get an appointment.
Well, there we go. So they have this ideal, and it's part of their plan to resolve maintenance cases within 90 days. But so what does that tell you? It means that there's a backlog.
Yeah.
Because if there wasn't a backlog, you would be able to go to court. But then within that, it's not that easy, because for a legal process to be recognized, you've got to serve a document within 14 days, working days of a court date. So that is probably 21 days. So if you could go to court and you could get an application, it's got to be served within 21 calendar days, approximately, for it to be legal.
Okay.
Do we have the infrastructure to do it? Because if they live in a different province, if they live in a different suburb,
you have to...
How do you get them served? Because they can't appear in court unless there's a return of service. And that's part of where the biggest problem. People move, the mother of the children doesn't know where to find them, they don't know where they've moved to. There's many, many obstacles.
Yeah.
That's just one of them. That's just to get your first appearance. But again, there's been an amendment to the Act which made provision for an interim order. But again, you both have to appear at court at the same time to be able to have an interim order made.
Now, just that, I think, also prevents a lot of women from going. For example, if the issue is not just financial abuse, but there's physical abuse as well, for that woman to have to go and face this man that she fears in a court setting that is already intimidating, it's just something that's insurmountable. It's something that you just feel you can't get over. But on that note, I think it's time we take a break. And when we come back, I think it's time to speak to our expert, Aisha Karim. We'll be back just now.
Hi there, my name is Linda Smith-Harvey, and I'm the creator of the Abundance Diary. So this diary actually supports you to transform your view of money to one of abundance, to one of gratitude and appreciation for what you do have. There are templates and exercises to follow. There's even a debt freedom plan, together with templates where you can actually fill in details as to where you want your money to go, rather than being left wondering where it went. So this diary is designed to empower you in a very important area of your life, and that's your money. Because when your money is out of order, it affects every other area of your life. And so this single book that will last for a year allows you to track, monitor, manage, review, and even reflect on what's happening in the area of money. And at the front of the diary, it explains in detail how to get the most out of your diary. So there are a few available in the giveaway, And we have hardcover, and we also have the soft cover wire binding. So, the Abundance Diary, a diary that makes a difference.
Welcome back to Pandora's Box. And before the break, we spoke about the intricacies and all these different aspects of financial abuse, how to recognize what it is. And we are now joined by Aisha Karim, all the way from Durban. Aisha, welcome once again to Pandora's Box, and thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Good evening, Felicity and Leila, and to all your viewers. Thank you for having me back on the show.
Hi, Aisha. Thanks for joining us again this week. We wanted to get some sense from you in your practice. Do you come across financial / economic abuse quite often with the women that you are representing?
So, as you might know, I specialize in family law. And so, yes, I absolutely do see quite a bit of financial abuse in my particular area of law. What I find to be most common is financial abuse is usually, and not all the time, but usually, it comes as an absolute last form of abuse. So during a marriage, we may see certain aspects of domestic violence. It may be physical abuse, there may be psychological abuse, there may be some form of mental abuse, and the last bit of control that, and I'm using this very loosely and saying husbands, I'm not trying to be gender biased, but the last bit of control that a husband in these situations has is finances. And so once a woman has tried to leave or has left, the last string that he has to hold onto her or to control her from or through is finances. This often could be denying her finances personally. So for spousal maintenance, he may just put up an absolutely ridiculous fight, or financial abuse through not paying for maintenance for the minor children, and using them as tools and as pawns in his game. So do I see this often? Do I see financial abuse often? Yes, absolutely. It is such a huge it's such a huge area that we need to look into. It's such a huge area that needs more publicity, that needs more focus. And the courts need to be made more aware of the power of financial abuse. Now, me being an attorney, of course, I charge my clients a set hourly rate. And not all my clients, but a large majority of my clients are female. And what I find is that, especially when I'm trying to assist a stay-at-home mom or a woman who's really put her career on the back footing, what I've noticed is that the husband who has the power, who has the money, who has, a legal team at his disposal, will deliberately prolong matters, will deliberately oppose matters which really in essence don't need to be opposed, such as maintenance. There's really no reason for you to oppose a maintenance matter if the two parties can come to a mutual agreement. But what I've noticed is that, the husband in these situations deliberately drains the wife financially to a point where she actually cannot litigate any further because she's drained. She has no more money at her disposal. And with women, and I see this more with women than I do with my male clients, the woman will then sit across me in consultation and say, Aisha, do I use this money to keep funding this battle against him, which I think he's actually enjoying, because that's what narcissists like. It's how they keep their control of you. So in a lot of ways, he's enjoying the battle, believe it or not. And then a lot of my clients sit with the question of, do I continue with this battle against him, or do I save this money and use it for my kids? Do I use it to live, to grow, to move on from this? So financial abuse is massive. I see it it daily. I think the number of cases which I have seen no financial abuse is really so minimal, compared to when I do see it. And I see it in so many different forms daily.
What are the aspects that is more predominant than others?
I think the most predominant aspect in the situation would be when children are involved. I think that they become a really big tool for financial abuse. I think that often they are left at the financial assistance of their mothers, and the father then uses that as a way to financially abuse her and to really bring her to her knees. So I think the biggest point of contention here, and usually forms the center point of most arguments and most issues in surrounding financial abuse, is children.
So Aisha, with all the negative, there must be some good news stories as well, please.
Leila, thank you for the question. Yes, I always love a happy ending and stories that motivate us and motivate the rest of the women out there. And so in terms of happy endings and good stories, there are tons of them. In a recent judgment in the Johannesburg High Court, we had a Muslim marriage come in front of the court, and it was in terms of a Rule 43. Now, those of you that understand the legalities of a Rule 43, it's basically it's an interim order. When I say interim, it's the Rule 43 is there for the court to give recourse to a spouse for spousal maintenance, for primary residence of the minor children, and as well as for maintenance of the minor children, pending the outcome of the divorce. Now, as you know, in Muslim marriages, that is a little bit difficult because the word talaq would then end a marriage. And so would a woman really have a Rule 43 available to her? And a Rule 43 is usually the quickest way to get some form of maintenance for herself and for her children without going through a lengthy court battle. And in this judgment, the court ruled that yes, even though talaq was given, the Rule 43 stands, which is fantastic and phenomenal for women across the country, and it really does give them the opportunity to then take their matter further. So once you've been granted your Rule 43, and there's plenty of judgments and plenty of amazing stories where Rule 43s were granted, even in the circumstances where you feel like the odds are against you. Once the Rule 43 is granted, a lot of the time spousal maintenance is granted. That would then give you the opportunity to then explore your options and explore what is available to you, and how to better secure yourself and protect your rights and protect the rights of your children. On closing, I would like to say that please remember that financial abuse is something that is recognized in our laws. So it's a recognized piece of legislation. The Domestic Violence Act specifically includes financial abuse. So if you are being financially abused, there are tons of recourse that's available to you. It is up to you to stand up, to recognize that you are being financially abused, and to take a stance and to do something about it. There are always ways to get help. If you can't, obviously a lot of times when you are being financially abused, you may not be able to afford a private attorney. However, from what I've seen clients that are being financially abused, and they start getting very clever about planning themselves. I think someone that's in a financially abusive relationship that needs to get out and may not have access to money needs to start being a little creative about how you're going to plan yourself, manage yourself, and get yourself to a position where you can get help. Help is available. If you cannot somehow make a plan to get finances to get a private attorney, we do have recourses like probono.org, Legal Aid South Africa. But remember something, the Domestic Violence Act falls under family courts, right? So you actually don't need legal representation in order to have your rights protected. You can actually just go down to court yourself, fill out the requisite forms, and lodge a claim for financial abuse against your partner and let the courts decide. So the important thing to note is that this form of protection is available to you. You've just got to literally reach out, grab it, take control of your life, and get your power back.
Thank you so much, Aisha. Felicity, it's wonderful to know that some stories do have a good ending. You shared with me some time back that you organize a petition and then nobody shows up, or maybe 10 or 20 people out of thousands. What would you say to women watching us now to encourage them to actually be part of the bigger cause?
I think that we all have a responsibility to be a lot more socially conscious. And what is being socially conscious? For me, it's recognizing that there are issues that are really wrong and that we need to unite, particularly as women. We need to unite, and we need to be going as a united force and with a united voice, that we want change, that we want things to be done differently. And you've got to stand up and go, that's enough. That's enough, and no more. And sometimes it takes a lot more energy to actually say no more, than what it does to go, I just give up. It's easier to go with the status quo because it's scary. You know, a lot of women don't recognize at the time that they're actually going through some kind of abuse. And when we talk about abuse, what is abuse? It could be nonverbal. It could be that look that you get, that you know that if you don't obey or comply, that even if it's somebody slamming the doors and going and getting in the car and revving and not seeing them for 2 days, that is a form of abuse. So there's many, many layers. So it's being courageous enough to take a stand and go, that's enough. And we are enough. We are not only complete when we are in relationship. We are enough. And we do not have to accept that. And it's learning to stand up and go, that's enough, no more, and I'm walking away. Easier said than done, because if there's a lot of abuse, and there are a lot of women, I have been moved to tears so many times just listening to the kind of abuse that women go through. And we know a lot of women who've actually lost their lives when they've said, it's over.
Well, I suppose,
or when they found out.
We've had many celebrities. The Oscar story is, of course, the most prevalent in South Africa. I think on everybody's lips, probably still now. And so many others, where we speak about abuse against women in the media when something happens to a well-known person. But there are hundreds and thousands of women that are going through the same things day in and day out, year in and year out. We need to do something. And I think this kind of talk show is important to keep addressing the issues, keep talking about it, make women aware. I think very often women are sitting in their situations thinking they're alone, thinking they have no right to talk. If they do talk, they'll be in trouble. That fearful energy, that male masculine energy pushes down on you as a female. It is real, you know, that fear is real. It's for many women, it's a prison. And the sad part is a lot of women would rather just stay in that situation rather than break away, because what you know is a lot more safe than what you don't know. But it's only in our minds, not necessarily in reality. And it's difficult. I know you can sort of speak for your own story, I can speak for mine, and so many women can speak for theirs. It is very, very difficult when you find yourself in that circumstance. But once you have the courage to walk out and you look from the outside in, the thing you ask yourself is, why did that take me so long?
Correct. Yeah,
why did it take me so long to do this? Why did I wait so long before I left? And I think it's simple. It's just we didn't feel ready. We didn't feel we had the ability to do it. And we are here today to tell you that you can. You absolutely can. If you feel that you are too weak, find somebody that can support you. Listen to advice. Ask people for advice. Listen to shows like this. And ask for the professional advice, like Aisha and so many others that are willing to help and give advice. And I think in closing, if you can just share a few words of wisdom out of your own experience around the issue of financial abuse.
If you don't try, the answer is always no. Okay. So if you're not going to go to court because you've heard that it is so tiring and you treat it so badly and it takes so long, then you're always never going to get maintenance. And to remember, as emotionally taxing as what it is, that it's the child's right to be financially supported by both parents. I think it's very important for us always to remember that it's the child's right to have a relationship and to be financially supported by both parents up until the age of 18, which is the age of majority, or self-supporting. So if the child is still at school, well, it's logical you need to carry on supporting your child. Some people don't have that logic, but the child needs support until it's self-supporting.
Right, so that brings us to our competition. Yay!
Who's our winner?
So you need to like, you need to subscribe, you need to leave us a comment or ask a question or give a suggestion, and from those we will choose a lucky winner. Next week, what are we going to be looking at?
We're going to be looking at co-parenting and unpacking that a little bit further.
Do make sure to come and join us next week, Tuesday at 8 p.m. right here on our YouTube channel, and you can also catch us on Facebook, Pandora's Box ChatShow. So do join us. Felicity, have a lovely evening, viewers, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for joining us. And before you all sign off, please remember to use our hashtag, which is Pandora Talks, because she has a voice. Good night.
Good night.